Good.
What I'd like to point out is you that
Sounds like you talked to.
and
Right there, it's event center, one word, all caps.
it says it does not.
You didn't think they'd use it all,
But it is.
It's good.
but they must have got time.
Okay,
Yeah.
hang on.
Are they, the guys staying in office or just two?
The magic 5%.
No, so just- so just they're not getting the inventory.
I think everybody done correctly.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, that's fine. Just didn't know. It is. Yeah.
Did this go away?
No. It's more focused.
Okay,
great.
Too bad coming down.
Yeah, maybe it's just down there.
Was it good? Yeah, yesterday it was pretty hazy. Didn't see much. Are we being recorded now, Wes, or not yet?
And live stream. Gotta love the YouTube live stream, huh?
I just got out and you got one down. Everybody knows how the price of beets is doing.
I do that sometimes just so I don't have to really.
You know, I've actually had a lot of people tell me they like the YouTube live stream because it gets recorded and it's on the YouTube
Yeah.
site,
They can
right?
go back and watch it later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of people have told me that they go back and watch it later when they have the time.
Do you get
Is that good or
any
bad?
facts or statistics from it? Yeah, how many people have watched
That
it?
was nice to you.
You can see how many people have watched it, yes.
And whether or not they're repeat watchers or.
I don't know the answer to that.
What was the question?
On YouTube, can you see how many people have watched a given recording?
Is there a recording?
No, and
He's got a daughter in
we go back and look.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, it just shows,
And he's always
shows the phone number. Someone watched it twice, it might have captured.
So one daughter spoke,
Okay,
one
so
daughter
does
spoke.
it say you need IP address?
Does the son, does he work?
But Brian, you have to be concerned about people that have time to go out and watch this.
I'm trying to block the sound from it.
Right, what's that? I just got someone smile, so I said.
Al, it's been attorneys that have told me they appreciate that feature.
TJ thinks it's great.
Yeah, he's one of them who told me that.
So they can
What, the recording?
bill twice.
I wasn't gonna say that.
Continuing bill.
All right.
Having a going on a continuous loop.
How many times can you bill your client for watching the meeting?
How's your nose going?
Which one is those? Who's
Wait,
that?
God, that was.
I don't know. They finally decided to sign the engagement. So it's-
We'll get a.
Yes.
Not sure if it was intentional, but we lost sound from you guys.
You don't let him push my.
I know better than to start randomly pushing buttons.
I just wondered, maybe Wes walked by and muted it real quick, but I want to do it from here.
fighting tater uniforms. Did you hear about that?
Mr. Gibb, did you raise your hand? I'll make it.
Tell me when I can go, Jennifer.
Whenever you're ready, sir.
I won't go before you tell me go.
Cowboys are ready.
Okay, we'll call Aquifer Stabilization Committee meeting number 225 to order, September 10th, 2025, 2 p.m. at the Hilton Garden Inn in Twin Falls. So it looks like first on our agenda, we're going to talk about aquifer storage levels, and we're going to hear from Mike McVeigh.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, do you want to do a roll call first?
Oh, that's true. Sorry. Let's do a roll call.
Sure, on the committee, we have Chairman Stevenson. Parker. Mr. Olmstead,
Here.
Mr. McMahon,
Here.
and then other board members, Ms. Cole-Hansen,
Here.
Mr. Gibbs,
Here.
Mr. and Mr. Van.
Here.
Hey.
And yes, then next we'll hear from Mike McVeigh. He's on by video conference, and he will give us an update on the Eastern Snake Plain Aquifer storage change over the last year.
All right, are you ready, Brian? You want me to go ahead?
Yes, go ahead, Mike, please.
Okay, appreciate it. Hey, just on a personal note, I want to tell you how much I enjoyed listening to you guys mumble and fumble through technology. It makes me feel a lot better about myself. So I do that a lot. So Jennifer, shall I go ahead and share my screen? Does that work best? Okay, I'm going to do that. Let me see. Are you seeing just a slide, or are you seeing the old presentation?
Whole presentation on mine.
Yeah.
So just not the presentation, you know, the stuff with the slides on the side?
We'll just need to go down and click on the.
Well, darn it.
That's not the end of the world, Mike.
Okay, yeah, I've
That'll
got
work.
Okay. So as Brian just said, my name is Mike. I work in the hydrology section here at IDWR. And again, we're going to talk about storage changes in the ESPA. Excuse me. So I give this presentation a lot. So I think a lot of people in there have heard a bit of this, but I think it's important to have perspective so we can have understanding. And that means telling a story. So I like to tell the story over and over. One, so we remember, and two, for those who haven't heard this before, it'll make it a lot easier to understand what we're doing. And again, I think most people in that room are very familiar with the ESPA and very familiar with the ESPA model. But I show the model outline quite a bit during this presentation, so I do want to stay oriented. And so as we're going through here, you know, I kind of use these landmarks as the Big Lost and Araco up here on this finger, and Pocatello down here on this finger. And then kind of down here in the flat areas are the Thousand Springs and Twin Falls. And then you can see Idaho Falls is kind of in that northeast corner type thing. And if you do get lost and you really want to know where we're at, stop me and we can figure it out. But what I want to do is prevent you guys from thinking too much. I want you to see my pretty pictures and let your brain and your eyes do the understanding for you. So what we're talking about is aquifer water balance, right? We want to know how much water is in the in storage, and we want to know how much that storage changes. And that's inflow minus outflow equals the change in storage. That's a deceptively simple equation because it's very difficult. We spend a lot of time and money and effort to get to those inflows and outflows. And if we do this technique, it takes a long time to get the data, and it takes a lot of time to do the processing of the data. And if we go that route, it doesn't give us the ability to kind of assess management activities, assess what's going on in the aquifer in quote unquote real time. We really need something more efficient if we want to use this as a management and assessment tool. So fortunately, we can actually kind of cut to the chase using water levels. And that should kind of make sense, right? If there's more water in your well, there's going to be more water in the aquifer. And if there's less water in your well, there's probably less water in the aquifer. And that's the relationship that I'm trying to leverage here. And so the method itself is pretty simple. We measure water levels last year, and I subtract the depth of water this year from last year, and I get the change in the water levels. Now I interpolate those water levels from all the wells across the area of the model boundary. And for those that aren't familiar, interpolation is just a way to estimate information where you don't have any. And so you can imagine if you have 0 on one hand and 10 on the other, it's going to be 5 somewhere in the middle. And that's just a form of interpolation. So if I interpolate those depths across the area of the model, that gives me a volume. However, that volume also includes the aquifer matrix, and that's not really what we're looking for. And so to get to the amount of water in that calculation, I have to introduce what we call specific yield. It's kind of a boring definition, so let's look at my pretty cartoon. And what you see on the left here is my representation of the subsurface. This tan part's the unsaturated zone right below our feet. You go deeper, you get to that saturated aquifer area. And if you can imagine pulling out a piece of that aquifer, you can see that it's filled with water and rock. And if we let that water drain out by gravity, that's the water that's available to us. That's our specific yield. We express that as a percentage. I multiply that by that previous volume that I calculated. That removes that aquifer matrix and leaves us with just the volume of water left in storage, or change in storage, excuse me. And so that's the simple process. Simple to say, maybe a little bit harder to do. So we base this, of course, we need data, right? And we want a lot of data, makes it more certain the more data we have. So we base them on what we call mass measurement events. Mass measurement event is when we go out and we measure as many wells in as short a period of time as we can, because we're looking for a snapshot in the aquifer. And then we're going to compare those snapshots year to year to year. Now, we started doing these mass measurements as a calibration effort for the model. So they're kind of sporadic at the beginning, but since 2008, we do them every 5 years now. And so that helps with this calculation, and it also helps improve our calculation of the eSpan model. We like to do these in the spring for a few reasons, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to integrate the impacts of all last year's water use and kind of this resultant condition. And then that's when we take our snapshot. So we want as much time as possible for that equilibration to occur. So if you imagine a surface water irrigated area, the water levels are going to rise over the irrigation season. A groundwater irrigated areas, water levels are going to drop over the irrigation season. And then over the winter, those water levels are going to equilibrate. We give it as much time as we possibly can take our snapshot. And we go right before the beginning of the next irrigation season because we don't want to get caught up in water use of that upcoming year. And you can kind of imagine it could be an irrigation well. It could be the well in my backyard when I do dishes. But you turn on that well, you're going to have maybe several feet of drawdown in your well. Now, if I use that water level in my calculation, it's going to look like I used many thousands, maybe, of acre feet instead of a couple of gallons. And so I want to avoid that mistake. And so by waiting as long as we can, we have less opportunity to make that mistake. And so we're looking for these major impacts due to water usage. We're looking for impacts due to wet winters. And then we also have to consider impacts due to managed recharge. And the trick with managed recharge is we apply it pretty locally, but it's for regional impacts. So we have to figure out a way to capture it without getting kind of caught up in this local impacts that would happen, like if you turned on a well. And so it's really hard to figure that out, but this is kind of a model-based calculation. And so I used kind of the model parameters for that. So I exclude any wells that are less than a mile from a known recharge site. And those wells that are further than a mile exclude any water levels that are less than 30 days away from an obvious recharge event that I can see in the data. And so that's how I kind of keep ourselves safe. I don't want to over estimate what we did from recharge, and I don't want to miss it either. And so that's the way I'm trying to keep ourselves safe. So that brings up the idea of transducers. I like to talk about transducers because they One, they give us a lot more data. They allow us to collect data when we can't get out there. Remember, this is a springtime calculation, and there are a lot of areas we can't get to at the time that I need data. And so if we throw a transducer in there, it can go on collecting that data while we can't get there. We can go out there when the weather's nicer and still grab the data at the appropriate time. We get a lot more data. It allows me to understand the behavior of the well, helps me make better selections on what's going on. And then it also helps me see stuff like recharge or local water level use or local water use impacts. And so these are very helpful. And I think I probably used around 70 wells with transducers in the calculation this time around. Okay, so here's an example of transducer data. This is a well next to milepost 31. I actually don't use this well because it's within a mile of the recharge site, but the extreme water level changes help me illustrate my point. And so you can see before managed recharge came along, we come in and measure April 1st, April 1st, April 1st, and it works out really well. That's exactly what we're looking for. But in 14 and 15, the board started dabbling with the recharge program, and then it really took off. And so now the question is, if this well was further than a mile away, what would you do here? What would you do here? Are these valid water levels or not? And that's how I use that 30-day minimum and that mile away minimum for the wells that I'm choosing. So let's look at some of our change maps. Again, I'm kind of trying to tell a story as we go through. So if you've seen this before, I hope you don't fall asleep. Hopefully you're just secure in the knowledge that you may be smarter than somebody next to you. So as we go through, I'm going to show these figures quite a bit. They're all going to show the years of comparison at the top. They're going to show the calculated volume change right here and the number of wells I used in the calculation. And then for these first several figures, there may be different numbers on the scale, but the color ramp itself is the same. And so that way you don't have to kind of keep looking back and forth. If it's darker red than the year before, you know the water levels dropped more than they did in the figure before. So I did this on a lark in my office one time. I thought, geez, this seems kind of nice. And did 1980 to 2001. And I brought this to some decision makers and said, gee, look what I found. And they were a little bit shocked. I always blame Brian for this, but it's kind of funny, you know, people on the board and people above me were just like, oh my God, 2 million acre feet over that 20 years. That's amazing. Go back and do it again. So I did the 1980 to 2002, 3.9 million acre feet. And now you've probably done the math in your head. That's 1.9 million acre feet in 1 year. 2 million over 20 years. 1 million over 2 years, or over 1 year, excuse me. So this isn't looking really good, right? So let's go back and do it again. 1980 to 2008, 6 million acre feet in the hole. 1980 to 2013, 7.5 million acre feet in the hole. News just keeps getting worse. I have no point of reference. I just see bad news. 18, we climbed out of this kind of deep abyss into a really deep hole. And now we're only 6.5 million in the hole for 1980. And remember, that was Snowmageddon for us, 2016-17. And then we go to 2023, our last major mass measurement event. And we can see we're back down to 9.3 million acre feet lost since 1980. And so now I've done this neat calculation. It's caused a lot of heartburn. And in fact, I don't think it's as valuable as it is concerning. You know, you can't really make decisions on this. I've just come in and say, hey, look, I've got bad news for you. We didn't need to know that. We already had a feeling. So what can we do in the middle? Again, I'm trying to tell a story. Well, the fact is we do collect hundreds of wells or measurements on the plane every spring, just as part of this long-term monitoring. And for long-term monitoring, you know, you just kind of go out in the springtime, you know, whether you know, if you can get away from your desk or the weather's nice, you go out. If the weather's bad and you're busy, go out a little bit later in the year. So it's not real tight. It just gives us a general indication of what's going on. But we're trying to do more with this data than we did in the past. And so since 2016, we now conducted on that same snapshot time frame that we do those larger mass measurement events. And that way it's a little more apples to apples, and we have a little less variation based on the timing of the measurements. So now let's look at those annual measurements. I start in 2015 for this presentation because that's when the world started to change for us. 2015, the board's recharge really took off. And we had the first settlement agreement activity started taking off. And so this kind of represents this kind of pre-aggressive management onto post-aggressive management conditions. Excuse me. So first year, 15 to 16, we lost 300,000 acre feet. Okay, that's bad, but you know, that's kind of almost normal, maybe a little below normal, but that's not out of the range of what we consider normal in this aquifer these days. 16 to 17, this included Snowmageddon, 800,000 acre feet gain in storage. Now, to me, this is awesome, right? I've shown a lot of negative numbers over the years, and then finally I get to show a positive number. So I'm happy. The board members at the time were not that happy. Everybody was kind of shocked at the fact that it was only 800,000 acre feet. I'd shown you earlier that in 2000 to 2001, we've lost 1.9 million acre feet. And then now the most snow that a lot of us can remember, we only gained 800,000. Notice a couple of things about that. One, you kind of see these lower elevation fringes are getting a lot of recharge, probably from the runoff and melt from that wet winter. We're getting some impacts due to recharge here in the during the SWID and board recharge efforts. And then notice in the middle and the northeastern part of the plain, it's still all pink. And remember, that's really cold out there. And so at the time that I do this calculation, this stuff hadn't melted yet from that wet winter. It hadn't been introduced to the aquifer, and so it didn't impact the calculation. We go to 1718, now we see the big gain, that 1.6 million acre feet. And you can see now we're getting a lot of benefit from our recharge because we have a lot more water available for our recharge rates. And you can also see the center and the northeast of the plain. The water is melted, been introduced to the aquifer, and it raised the water levels. And so that brings up another point, is that nothing happens on an annual basis out in the real world. We have to break it up into annual basis because we're humans and we need to make decisions, but it doesn't all happen on our time scale, and definitely not on the time scale of my calculations. And so this is a good map to look at to notice several different things. One, you can really see SWID's injection well recharge. You can see Milner-Gooding recharge. Looks like we're getting a little bit of recharge down here. And then you can also see down at the southern end of the Oakley fan, they piped and canaled, I think it was piped, some distribution systems down there. And ever since, the water levels have dropped significantly, and they continue to drop today. And that's just, I don't know if it's a warning, it's just information that if you reduce recharge in an area, you're going to drop water levels, just like if you provide recharge, you're going to boost water levels. So kind of keep an eye on that area as we go through, and you'll notice that it just does not go away. So 1718 was good. 1819 minus 30,000 acre feet. Now this calculation is pretty high level, and I don't like to report it to less than 100,000 acre feet. It's just not that certain. But decision makers, it's really hard to go from 0 to 100,000 and make any sense of it. So I reported this to 30,000, but just between you and me and the wall, that's just kind of the ugly side of 0. And I think we should call it good. We didn't have that much change. 19 to 20, 400,000 acre feet gain. We like that. Next year, we lost it all, 500,000 acre feet. Then we go into dry conditions again. Notice all those areas we're still doing recharge, but it's all relative to the years before. So if we have more recharge in the past, even though we're still adding water, those water levels are going to recede a little bit just because we're not adding more and more and more. We're adding actually a little less. So it looks like we're losing storage. We're just losing storage compared to the year before. And our friend down in the south is still like that. 22 to 23, another million acre feet lost from storage. 23 to 24, we're back on the top, 800,000 acre feet. Our friends down in the south are still going down. Our recharge areas are still going up. And then finally, 24 to 25, what we're really interested in, no change. So I told you before, I showed you that negative 30,000, but it's really 0. This was really 0. I was, a couple hundred acre feet away from 0, which is way, way, way smaller than my uncertainty on this. So I'm really confident that this year we really stayed even. And I think it's important, and I think people like to see the sentinel wells. You can kind of see where they're spread around for water level changes. And I just want to note too that you see a lot of this white and pink in this middle area. Those are very small changes, at 0 to 2 and 0 to -2. But a lot of these, are 0.1, 0.2 feet changes. It was, on the INL, you would literally have wells right next to each other, 0.1 minus 0.1, that kind of thing. So very, very stable from year to year on, from 24 to 25. So here I finally get to tell my story. I gave you my preamble. Here's our point of reference. From 1912 to 1980, the USGS did the inflow minus outflow method. And you can see that when they started irrigating early on, those were very inefficient irrigation infrastructure, flood irrigating everywhere. So we're getting a lot of recharge over a distributed area, over a large area. And so that provided a lot of recharge, even through the Dust Bowl era, it just kept rising. We get to the 1950s and a couple of things happen. We get the water savings where they stopped running water out into the plain and started storing it up in the Palisades Reservoir. And downhole pumping technology made groundwater irrigation feasible. And so now we had kind of this double whammy in the 50s, right, where there's less recharge and more discharge due to groundwater pumping. And then you notice as you go along, we just kind of start riding the weather. You can kind of see the weather patterns oscillating down with this long perverse downward trajectory until finally we get to 2015 right here onto present. And you can see these last 2 years are very stable. And then this next slide, these are the calculated Thousand Springs discharge. I show this one, we just kind of want to make sure we're on par with each other. You know, spring discharge is head-driven flow. So if water levels are higher, you're going to have more discharge from the springs and vice versa. And then also notice it's not exactly the same. And that's because I'm calculating the storage changes over the entire aquifer, where these springs are being affected more strongly by water levels closer to the springs. And so they're not always going to be exactly the same. And then my intermediate change map, again, we like to do this from 2015, try to keep ourselves on schedule here. And so since 2015, since the onset of the managed recharge program and the settlement activities, we've gained about 500,000 acre feet in the system. And then again, the Sentinel wells. Sentinel wells kind of show us how they relate to the water level changes across the aquifer. Now, I don't usually do this, but I do want to kind of put this bug in your ear. You know, we talk about equilibrium, we talk about stopping the drop, we talk about have we fixed the problem? And it's a question right now. You know, we have watched this go down for quite a long time, and now we get to this era here where things have kind of flattened out. And the question is, are we in equilibrium? Have we stopped the drop? And I'm telling you right now, I'm not really sure. I don't know. You only know if you're in equilibrium when you look backwards and see that you had been. Tomorrow is a new year, and we just don't know. But it's something to keep in mind. Okay, so my summary, we gained 500,000 acre feet since 2015, and we stayed level from last year, or from 2023, or excuse me, 24 to 2025. And then I just have my little speech at the end here. Undulations are due to weather and other forces are going to be expected, and we have to be able to weather them. Our gains are fleeting because this aquifer does leak through Thousand Springs and other discharge sources. And so persevering through the dry cycles is important. And I just say that because I know it gets harder to do this stuff when things get difficult. So it seems short and sweet, but I think I'm done. And any questions, I'd be willing to entertain them.
Any questions from members of the committee? Comments? Any questions from other board members?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
Mike, I was looking through the materials this morning, and I thought I saw some information on the Blackfoot area springs. Are we seeing that today, or was I mistaken on that?
That'll be in the next presentation.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mike, I've got one question. I see that the Hagerman number, are there any particular areas of the Milner to Bliss reach or whatever, that whole Hagerman deal? Is there any particular reach that's gaining more water than other areas, or are they all about the same?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm just using the calculated spring flows. I think Ethan might be able to talk to the individual springs a little more clearly than I am.
Okay.
I'm just staying in water levels.
Any other questions from committee or board members? Okay. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Our next one, I think Ethan's ready to go there.
Yep. And just as an announcement, since the last time you've seen Ethan, I think he's accepted a promotion in the department, and he is now the Technical Services Bureau Chief. So we're glad to be able to have him in that role.
So do we refer to him as chief now?
Yes, you can refer to him as chief.
Okay.
Probably most of the bang for his promotion is not being referred to as chief.
Just like we refer to you as deputy. Deputy Pat.
I don't know, chief sounds better than deputy.
I think so too.
One Barney Fife, a deputy.
I think he was.
Deputy dog. You're a deputy dog.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So yeah, my name is Ethan Geisler, Tech Services Bureau Chief. I'm going to present on aquifer discharge. So Mike just presented on aquifer storage change. This is kind of the outflow from that. So we'll get into it. I'm going to start. There's kind of two different reaches here that we're looking at. The first one is the near Blackfoot to Minidoka reach. The other one is the Milner to King Hill reach, which we call Thousand Springs discharge. And I'm going to focus on that one first, since Mike was kind of touching on that one in his presentation. So in this reach, we have the Snake River, which incisors through the canyon, makes that canyon. That's where the springs occur. They kind of the Snake River intersects that groundwater table. And throughout the Milner to King Hill reach, you have different types of springs. So some of them are channelized and have road access like this one. Other ones are on the hillside or just connected to the Snake River. And there's issues with accessing those and measuring them. And so some of those are just difficulty in road access. Seepage can be in the side of the vegetation side of the canyon wall. And so it makes it difficult to measure them. But the department currently uses a method called the Kellstrom method, which Kara Ferguson calculates each spring and summer. And so it basically uses these 17 measurements. The USGS goes out in the spring. They take actual measurements. Some of these are actually monitored all year, so we have continuous records for some of them as well. And then a combination of that, they can start to build these regressions between what we actually measure all year and what we're measuring in just the spring time period. And so from that, we can build the Kellstrom calculation, which Mike showed, and get an idea of roughly how much is coming out of that Thousand Springs discharge for 2025. And so this is the plot that Mike was showing. So on the left axis is his aquifer storage change. On the right axis is the Kellstrom calculation that Kara does. And so you can see there that value for 2025 is provisional. So as we get more data throughout the year, we'll update that at the end of the year. So that could change slightly, but I think what you're seeing there is a real signal, is that it's a little bit higher than it was last year. And I think part of that's just to do, it's on that southwest portion of the aquifer. There's a lot of recharge going on in the lower valley. And so it's kind of driving that up a little bit more maybe than what we're seeing in the entire system. So just something to keep in mind. This also plays a pretty big role in, if we go back to the map at the Murphy gauge. So the Idaho Water Resource Board, they have a minimum stream flow right there of 5,600 CFS and 3,900 CFS. And so many of you are familiar with this graphic. This is the AADF calculation that the department tracks on a weekly basis. And so I'll walk for those that aren't through this. So this salmon colored block here at the bottom is the 5,600 during the non-irrigation season, minimum flow, 3,900 during the irrigation season. The red line here is the minimum for the period of record. For the Snake River at Murphy gauge, which is a USGS gauge. The green is the median of record. And then the blue line is the actual stream flow value for 2025. And then that black line is what the department calculates as the adjusted average daily flow. It's a 3-day average, and it basically takes out Idaho Power storage operations through the Middle Snake. And so you can see there was some flows over Milner. We also tracked that as well. So the Bureau has some flow log, and then Idaho Power had some storage releases. And if you take those out, you can see these lines get pretty close to the minimum flow that we see for the period of record. And a lot of that is sustained by these Thousand Springs discharges. So just something to keep in mind. Another reason why we calculate that Kellstrom calculation as well. So kind of to Dean's question, I'll kind of walk through some of these springs that we continuously monitor, whether it's by us at IDWR or the USGS. And you'll be able to see a little bit of are certain reaches kind of being affected differently. And I think the answer is yes in that. So we'll start here, Current Tunnel, which is in the Hagerman area. You can see here, I think I pointed this out last year, you get kind of a trend here where it's increasing after 2017 or around 2017, decreasing after that. And now I think there's starting to become a little bit of a trend of leveling out or maybe an up as we move upstream here, but I'll kind of show that. So this is Current Tunnel. If we move on to CPAC sites, so there's CPAC, ABC, this is also near Hagerman. So we kind of got that upward trend and then down, and now it's leveling out. If we go to the other CPAC site at Bridal Veil, you see it might be coming up a little bit there compared to last year. So this is also 2024 for reference. because this is on a water year basis. So as we finish this water year, we'll add the 2025 value to this as well. If we look at Box Canyon here as we move upstream, you can see this one's actually come up quite a bit more compared to 2023. If you compare 2024, and we actually plot this one. So this graphic is that gray shading is in the back is data from 1990 to 2024. The dashed dark gray line is the median of that period of record. And then I also plot 2024 just for reference there. You can kind of, if you think back to the last plot, you can kind of think about, okay, 2024 is there, 2025 looks like it's going to be a little bit higher in this case. We started out a little bit higher, kind of gotten close to that 2024 line, but I think if you sum all that up, it'll be a little bit higher than 2024. So now we're starting to get a little bit of an increase in those springs. If we move on to Brick Springs, this is monitored by the GS as well. Also an increase there in 2024 compared to 2023. And you can see we started the year out a little bit higher here in 2025, this black line compared to 2024. Kind of bounced around. We'll see where that one lays out, settles out for the rest of the year. But looks like it'll at least be on par for 2024, maybe annual value. If we look at Blue Lakes, this was monitored by the GS. I think it's monitored by the department now. Also kind of leveling out there, maybe a little bit of an increase. And then if we look at 2025 compared to 2024, started out really good in the water year, but now we've kind of settled back to that 2024 value. So we'll see where that shakes out. And then the last one, Devil's Wash Bowl up in the upper end. You can see that one swings pretty good. 2024 value is pretty high compared to 2023. And kind of the same trends that we saw in that last one. Higher at the beginning of the water year, and then kind of getting closer and maybe even below the 2024 value. So we'll see how those shake out, but it kind of gives you a sense those lower springs downstream maybe aren't responding quite as much as these ones up here in the upper reach. So I don't know if that answers your question a little bit, Dean, but
yeah.
Any questions on Thousand Springs? I'm going to now go to the near Blackfoot to Minidoka if there's no questions here. Give people an opportunity. Okay, so now we're going to focus on that near Blackfoot to Minidoka reach. I've shown these slides before, but I think it's a good background for how we calculate this aquifer discharge. So basically calculating the reach gain or aquifer discharge for this reach, it's a little bit different than water right accounting. We're just trying to isolate what's coming from the aquifer. So that's the gain or loss between the beginning and the end of the river reach from the aquifer. So outflow minus inflow, in this case, Minidoka gauge minus the near Blackfoot gauge. And then we're taking into account any change in reservoir content, and then evaporation we're adding back in diversions, taking out return flows. In this case, it's Peoples Canal and then the Fort Hall canals that their return flows come into that reach, as well as the Aberdeen Springfield here on the west side of American Falls. And then we're also adding back in tributary flow. So in this case, it's the Portneuf and Rock Creek. And so when we run that calculation, we run that on a monthly time step, sum it up over the year, and you can see the annual reach gain here on the y-axis, and then the water year on the x-axis. And so this is a 2024 value, so we haven't finished the water year, kind of similar to those annual plots that I was showing before. And so we're not quite through 2025 yet, but I do have an update coming up here. But you can see that 2024 was much higher than 2023. So, and I also have this plotted with the aquifer storage change at the end. We'll be able to kind of compare everything together. This is pretty important to track nowadays since the stipulated mitigation plan kind of calls it out. So the mitigation plan between the Surface Water Coalition and the Idaho Groundwater Appropriators back in 2024 kind of talked about the reach gain. And I think it's a trigger point for some other mitigation activities. So in section 4.64.3 of the amended final order, talks about reach gains in the near Blackfoot to Minidoka reach of the Snake River shall be measured on a calendar year basis for the reach gains from the ESPA. This is a little bit different than I show you, so I'm going to show you the difference of the water year compared to the calendar year. I think the main takeaway is the values change, but the trend stays the same. So that That red line there is the calendar year, so January through December, compared to the water year, October through September. And so that 2024 value, give or take a couple 100,000 acre feet, but overall relatively stays the same. So I can show either. I've also been tracking this year just with that mitigation plan. So we calculate that reach gain on a monthly time step. And so this is the same plot that I showed for those springs. So we have the range of reach gains from 1980 to 2024 in that gray, the median in the dashed line, and then I also pulled out 2023 in red because I think that's a threshold in the mitigation plan for certain mitigation activities, and then also compared it to 2024. So this is the monthly time step. I don't know how useful that is, but as we move to the cumulative, that's on mine, I think.
Is that showing up on
That's
yours?
on mine. Yeah. I got it. We're good.
Okay.
So this is the cumulative. I think this shows a little bit better of where we're currently at with the reach gains. And this is a provisional value, so this may change, but as we're calculating it right now, it's pretty well aligned with what we're seeing in 2024, which kind of matches what Mike was showing in his Aquifer storage change from 2024 to 2025. And so if we show kind of those plots together, I didn't plot it here because it's not final, but if you were to imagine that green line, which is, so the upper one is the near Blackfoot to Minidoka discharge. If you just imagine that being similar to 2024, that kind of matches right on recently. And then the Thousand Springs discharge with his plot is on the bottom there. So you can kind of see the trends over time. But yeah, that's all I had. If there's any questions on either of those Aquifer discharge values, I'd be happy to take them.
Any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from other board members? So I have a question, maybe two of them.
Yep.
So it looks to be that we actually held up pretty good on the Blackfoot to Minidoka this year, above last year's values, it looks like.
It is, so far this, yeah, so if you're looking at 2024, it's above 2023 values. If you're looking at this year, it looks like it's going to match 2024. So it looks like we've stayed similar over the past 2 years.
Okay.
It's above the 23 base.
Right.
Yep. But 2025 is looking like it's going to be similar to 2024 currently, with the current calculation.
And that's we're about done, so.
Yeah, it's getting pretty close. Yeah, that's through August 31st.
Okay.
Because that's when you take the storage change values, but gives you context. And I'm also currently working on a memo that kind of outlines how we calculate this in more detail. It'll hopefully go on the website at some point here shortly as well.
So one more question, we go back to the Hagerman side. You know, they talked at one time about updating the Kellstrom method. Are they going to do that, or?
Yeah, so we are currently working with them to update that. I think it's going to be a combination of mass balance measurements, which is basically going upstream and downstream of some of those springs, taking the difference and saying, okay, that's coming from the aquifer, as well as monitoring some of the springs, kind of a combination of the two.
Okay.
I think they're in like the third or fourth year of that agreement, so we're getting pretty close to some final results from that we'll present to the board at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions from board members? Okay. Thank you. That looked like some good news.
Well, Mr. Chairman, this is all, I think, good news. We're showing
Yeah.
the ESPA is basically stable for the last 10 years. We're showing slight improvement in the Blackfoot to Minidoka reach gains, which we spent a lot of time talking about last summer. And I think, I mean, I don't think we're done, but I think things are coming
We've
along.
stopped the slide, maybe.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question for you. Is there, excuse me, is there a way to correlate the recharge numbers that we've done in a particular year with these values that you've got? Is that something that's not?
Yeah, I think correlating them is hard, but I think looking at them qualitatively makes sense. That's why we're seeing maybe the Kellstrom calculation being a little bit higher, because it's in that lower section where we've done a lot of the recharge. compared to maybe the near Blackfoot where it's leveled out. But as far as quantitatively attributing it to that gets a little bit tricky. And like Mike said, he kind of takes out some of those wells that are close to the recharge. So maybe we're not seeing some of that in his storage change, but I don't think it would impact that much. He's still getting a lot of that up and down.
I think Alex's presentation next will shed a little bit of light on your question, Al.
Yes, Chairman, just even, you kind of quantified this in volume in acre feet. Is there a reasonable way that we can talk about CFS?
Yeah, so the Kellstrom is in CFS.
Kellstrom's in
over an
CFS.
annual times, yeah, just the average.
The average over the annual.
Yeah. So there was, I think it was 150 CFS increase.
Okay.
Which you can see what Alex actually has the modeled contribution to that reach. We can see.
Okay.
See if that correlates. How much?
I'll quit getting ahead of the presenters.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Alex, go ahead.
All right, thank you. My name is Alex Moody. I'm a hydrogeologist at the department. And I'm going to speak to you today about modeling aquifer management activities on the plain. So I run these through EastBAM 2.2, our groundwater flow model for the Eastern Snake Plain Aquifer. I run 3 different scenarios. I run board recharge through it. I run Idaho recharge, which is going to include donated surface water coalition storage, as well as city recharge and mitigation. And then separately, I model pumping reductions. So these are the inputs into the model and kind of some descriptions about the data sets. All have some have strengths and others I kind of have to take educated guesses in terms of timing of these. But for Igloo recharge, we still get a report from them, so I put those volumes into the model to the best of my knowledge in terms of timing and location. Sometimes it can just be reported as a full year and a volume, so I kind of spread it out evenly. Sometimes we have more detail. This year, unlike previous years for this presentation, I've included some conversions for North Snake, and I've spread those out across their service areas. Pumping reductions, we just get an annual volume relative to the baseline pumping value. So I don't know exactly when these happen, so I just spread them out evenly through the irrigation season at the respective wells. A few of the reported pumping reductions occur outside the model boundary. It's a pretty small amount, less than 0.5% on average. So we're capturing most of those pumping reductions. And then with board recharge, the recharge group does a great job of tracking all of that. So the timing and location of those volumes are pretty well known. And just on the right here is kind of a quick summary, thousands of acre feet of the volumes that I'm putting into the model by calendar year. So these might not match exactly with the recharge numbers just because of that calendar year versus the recharge year is kind of August to July. But these are the rough numbers that are going in. And then on the right side here, this is kind of a 5-year running average of all of these inputs summed up. So this year, ending in 2024, this is the pumping reductions. We don't have them yet for this year. We're looking at about 550,000 acre feet going into the model. Just going to show some maps of what this looks like on the model grid. I'm not showing the entire model grid, but this is the EastBAM boundary that Mike showed, and then the cells where these mile by mile cells where these recharge volumes are getting input into the model. We kind of have a log scale here. The small dots, kind of the lower valley, that's those conversions I was talking about. So those get spread out across a large area, so they're only an acre feet to 10 acre feet. You can see the Milner-Gooding Canal running here, so obviously a lot of recharge happening there. And this is both board recharge and private recharge, and then you do have some in the upper valley. And then a similar map for pumping reductions. These are a lot more widespread and the volumes are smaller because we're talking about individual well pumping reductions here. You will get negative pumping reductions, which just means those wells did not reduce below the baseline pumping. Kind of just getting into it, so I run these volumes through the model, through eSpam. It's a monthly time step. So I sum them up on, on a monthly basis and put them in the model and then run them out and see what occurs to aquifer discharge at different reaches along Snake River, as well as what it's doing to storage. So this top plot, that's just your monthly input into the model. This is stacked for all recharge activities. So you can kind of see pumping reductions might occur at different times that recharge. The blue board recharge values here. These next two line plots, these are aquifer discharge or reach gains to the Snake River due to these management activities. So this is what eSpam's telling us is accruing to these reaches from these volumes input in terms of pumping reductions or recharge. So above Milner, this is going to include your Blackfoot to Minidoka reach, and I'll split these out a little more finally. Some slides coming up, but I just want to give a quick overview here. But all told, above Milner, at the end of July 2025, which is the end of my model run here, we're seeing about 287 CFS accruing to that reach from management activities. Below Milner, we have 138 CFS, and this is the all activities summed together. And then here on the storage, this is cumulative storage change due to activities. You can parse them out here. Sorry, there's a fly bothering me. For recharges has increased aquifer storage by 1.5 million acre feet since the start of the program. Igor recharge is standing about 0.33 million acre feet, and then pumping reductions have added almost 1 million acre feet. All told, at the end of the model run, we're looking at 2.73 million acre feet added to aquifer storage from management activities. This is down a bit by about 3.7% from this time last year, but kind of similar to Mike, that's a number that is just maybe the ugly side of zero, which I like how we put that. So we've added a lot of storage to the aquifer with these activities.
Mr. Chairman, Alex, while you run that last chart there, so the gains above Milner, which is the Blackfoot reach essentially, then so we've kind of changed board policy over the past few years that we don't discriminate against shorter term recharge. We're not trying so hard to get 5-year storage in the aquifer, and I think that shows how that big year we had in 24.
Yeah.
A lot of that's come back over the next year and into the second year, and I think that's why we've seen that leveling, and at least to a large extent. I mean, the pumping reduction's everything. The droughts don't last 10 years; they usually last 2 or 3 years, and the short-term recharge is very, very beneficial to meeting the diversion needs every year.
Yeah, that's a good point to make. That water can be used beneficially. Just get a little bit shorter term storage. Okay, I'm going to break out the river impacts to above near Blackfoot, then near Blackfoot to Minidoka, and then below Milner, that Thousand Springs reach. So on the left here, I've tried to sum up some of the volumes, average volumes that we're seeing in the model since 2018 that accrue to that reach April through October, so irrigation season, and then November to March. These lines are the same. Each line represents a different activity, so you can really see how these. I want to zoom in just show how these change through time as we have different volumes to recharge or different varying amounts of pumping reductions. But all told for this reach, we're adding about 73,000 acre feet during irrigation season to the reach and 52,000 acre 52,000 acre feet during the winter. Here at the end, above near Blackwood, sorry. Pumping reductions, we're saying about 90 CFS accruing to the reach, and then both recharge activities are a little bit below 40 CFS accruing to the reach. Near Blackfoot to Minidoka, got 52,000 acre feet accruing on average during the irrigation season for all activities, and then in the winter about 38,000 acre feet. I always like to see this board line kind of steadily increasing in this reach. This will become, we'll be able to see this spatially in some of my future slides, but basically it's just kind of this front from Lower Valley recharge, Milner, Gooding, and Milepost 31 recharge, slowly marching up the valley, which is why we see that steady increase. And then below Milner, reach gains, board recharge, excuse me, dominates down here. We're ending at about 115 CFS at the end of July. This July accruing because of board recharge, and then IGWA activities and pumping reductions are sitting a little bit below 27 CFS. And we're adding 57,000 acre feet to this reach during irrigation season, about 39 in the winter. This plot is another way, this is just an annualized way to view all these volumes. It might be a little busy, I apologize for that, but I kind of break it up into the different activities, board recharge at the top, IGWA, and then pumping reductions. And then each bar plot is a different reach, and then yellow is storage, so you can kind of maybe get a larger view of where these are occurring and how those change year to year. You can see how board recharge is really, especially the significant year, we get a lot into recharge there. Some years are smaller. We do have reach gains accruing due to these activities every year, which is a nice benefit. You can see IGWA does, we have some years where we're losing more to storage. That's just in years where they're not able to recharge as much. But different reaches are impacted by all activities, and these impacts do change, just vary based on spatial location and timing. And another plot kind of showing the same thing. This turn, showed in terms of, just normalize it to 100% for each reach and go to year. So above near Blackfoot, this green and purple part that's board recharge, IGWA recharge. That's making a majority of reach gains up there. The pumping reductions are a very close second, and that's essentially 50-50. How those impacts are seen at that reach. Near Blackfoot to Minidoka, similar story. Below Milner, again, we can see board recharge dominating in these 2024 and 2025. And then if we look at storage, board recharge is about 50% of the storage impact that we've seen, and then pumping reductions and IGWA recharge are the other 50%. In terms of retention, so I'm just calculating how much has been recharged since 2014 and looking at what remains in storage. Board recharge, we're sitting about 56% of all recharge accomplished is still in storage. So that's available for pumping or available for discharge to the Snake River. IGWA recharge and city and surface water coalition donate storage, about 30%, and then still a lot of the pumping reductions of those impacts remain in storage. So I'm going to bring in Mike's Aquifer storage change plot here and ask the question, what would happen if we weren't doing this? We take these observed storage change values that Mike has been calculating, and I subtract the storage impacts that we modeled from that value to get a sense of what it would look like if we weren't doing any of this. So that's this yellow line without management. I'll zoom in here in a second and kind of show everything, parse them out separately. So again, the blue line's the same here. That's Mike's Aquifer storage change value. You can see no change in 2025. And then I go through each of those scenarios: port recharge, igloo recharge, and pumping reductions, and subtract them from that Aquifer storage change. And you can see for each of those individual activities where we might be in terms of Aquifer storage had we not been doing those since 2014. So this red is the board storage. So instead of, Mike showed the change from 2015 to now, and I forget the exact number, but now that number essentially represents going from where this pointer is now to, sorry, a little laggy, basically to the end of the blue line. That was that value he said. But if we weren't doing anything, in terms of just void recharge, we'd be down, it wouldn't be a positive change. I know that was a positive number, but we'd be down. Sorry, there's a little box in my way to my pointer, so I can't say it. But into the end of the red, would be down from that point in 2015. And then if you add those all up, that's the yellow line. So that number I said earlier, the 2.73 million acre feet, that's the difference between the yellow line in 2025 and the blue line in 2025. And then because I showed you in class, looking at the same thing in terms of sentinel well impacts, again, we can just take in this case, I'm just looking at what the Aquifer says is the change in Aquifer levels, subtracting that from the sentinel well index, and we're about 5.6 feet higher with Aquifer management. All right, so now I'm going to transition into visualizing these through some animations. So if anyone has any questions before going to that, take that in hand as well. All right. So these are modeled Aquifer responses from board recharge starting in 2014. These are monthly values. So we'll see them in 2-foot contours. Where there's no contour, that's just less than half a foot. I just did that so we can kind of still see the features on the plane. Kind of tracking the time in the top left there. Early on, not as much recharge. In the lower valley, you can see Milner Gooding, Malthus 31 recharge occurring. And you can kind of see this. This is the front I was talking about, slowly heading up valley. And because we're changing the heads up there, and these springs are head driven, you're going to see more impacts to reach gains in the upper valley. I'll run that again. You can see like recharge of the Eaton canals and stuff. This does reach the river a little quicker, but you do still see some widespread impacts into aquifer heads. All right. I'm going to step through these for each of the scenarios. This is going to be igloo recharge. A little less happening. I sync them all up in time, just to make it easier to create these, but a little less happening in the beginning. More of this is going to occur in the upper valley. Notice the different scale here. Max here is about 10 feet, but we're still seeing widespread changes on this border about 2 feet in the upper valley. when it occurs in the lower valley, that's usually the donated surface water coalition storage. Run that one more time. Yeah, and you can imagine, just kind of in terms of talking about impacts to different springs, you can see how that might be occurring with these water level heads, because those impacts are different spatially, and so they'll impact the springs to varying magnitudes. And then pumping reductions. So yeah, the levels of the impact here can be different. The aquifer hydraulic properties, how transmissive it is and how much it stores are different spatially. So that's why you might see this place like over by Cary, it's very dark blue, but that could be a lower hydraulic conductivity or higher storage value, even though these impacts are, they're spread.
I think what the carry deal is probably is most of those are supplemental wells.
Yeah.
So they don't, until, as long as they get watered a little, would they?
Right, so there's a big.
Yeah, they're all supplemental, so.
Interesting to me, that Jefferson Clark area.
Yeah,
Right, yeah.
right there.
There.
All right.
It's interesting to see the line back there almost follows you can tell the upper valley, kind of where the great rift between the Water District 130 and 120 up there, how the model treats that.
So these changes are.
Mud Lake barrier,
right? On this
That's what's
chart, are
holding the
they-
water back.
These
Yeah,
these are not cumulative. These
The
are
other
just
one, I think
monthly
you see some of the
changes.
effects of the great rift.
Is that dark blue in that one right in the Mud Lake area, or?
Yes, that's Mud Lake.
I think there's some perched water there, Mud Lake area.
Yeah, this will be, the model's one layer. So these are calibrated to water levels in the, the regional aquifer. Oops, did not mean to exit out of that. All right, this next slide comes with a lot of caveats over on the left. There's a lot of interpolation going on here, but what I'm doing here is I'm looking at all those transducers similar to what Mike does, and I'm interpolating those. But what I'm doing this on weekly time steps, which we can do to our very widespread transducer network out there. And since I'm doing this with 505 wells over, since 2016 on a weekly basis, I can't go in and pay as much, go over with the fine tooth comb like Mike can. But this is more illustrative. So I'm looking at those water level changes, and then I'm comparing it to what we model and kind of using those values and comparing them to say what's causing this water level change that we're actually seeing. And so how I do that visually is I have this kind of 3-point color map here. At the blues, that will mean the model impacts from board recharge are contributing most to that observed water level change. If it's pink, that's going to be our ICWA total conservation, which is just the recharge with pumping reductions. And then yellow is just other sources. These are just sources that I didn't model. It could be natural recharge, groundwater inflow from tributaries, just other mitigation that I didn't model, I'm not aware of. And this will show both positive and negative water level changes. So these contours will kind of be your guide for what the water level changes are, that legend on the bottom right. If they have different sizes, signs, so if it showed the water level increasing because of a management activity, but the water level there was decreasing, I just zeroed at that modeled water level. The dotted line is your kind of zero change line. So a lot of natural recharge in the beginning are just unmodeled sources. In the lower valley, you can see the Milner Gooding popping up. But still, these are years, big water years we had. The pink, that's going to be your pumping reductions that are a little more widespread, kind of faint, but they're still there. You can see SWID recharge occurring. There's some blues there. We're really building over at Milner Gooding. You still do have a lot of, incidental recharge. That would be another source that I didn't mention. Kind of that Cary, groundwater district area, popping up in pink there. So the point of this was just to kind of show in between, maybe just get a sense of what it's looking like in between Mike's maps, but not for any true quantitative, but just more, just to illustrate the dynamic nature of the system. And it kind of breaks it down there at the end, just so that there's less data to support it. And that's all I've got. So just like to have some takeaways. We've increased aquifer storage by 2.73 million acre feet, and it seems like it's helping moderate that storage decline. Port recharge adds a fair amount of water to reach gains during the irrigation season, about 79,000 acre feet, and then 55,000 during the winter. That's across the whole Snake River. And just kind of summarizing those inputs, 5-year average fall mitigation activities is sitting at about 550,000 acre feet. I can take any questions with that, or go back to any of the other issues.
Any questions from committee members?
Not a question, Dean, but I like that picture of the progressive side.
Yeah,
that was a good one.
We get a lot of bad publicity on that side. It has a good side too.
Yeah. Good thing the photographer was facing south when he took the picture and not north.
So would you rather have dry wells or dirt piles? That's my question.
Well, you don't want to ask the public that, so. Question I guess I have, and I don't know if you have an answer to this, or if there is an answer. What's the best area to do recharge and other activities to increase the Blackfoot to Minidoka reach gains, so Blackfoot to Milner?
Just my initial sense would be closer to the reach, and it'll depend on when you want that water to return. So if you're wanting to come back in 2 months, 3 months next year, I think that would influence that answer.
We wanted to put it in the wet year, and we wanted to come out with the dry year. We don't know when that'll be.
You don't know the year, so.
Alice, could you go back to the slide that showed the reach gain, or the per amount coming out in that Blackfoot to Minidoka reach by source?
Yeah.
That might help answer Dean's question.
So it's not, the board recharge, these occur in different locations, obviously. Board recharge is mainly Lower Valley. It's certainly steadily growing, so continuing to do board, recharge down there is helping. The pumping reductions have more swings, but that's, that's kind of the pulse every year, and that volume varies.
Okay. Thank you. That gives a good view of that.
Okay.
Any other questions from board members or comments? Okay. We're down to other items. Do we have anything else?
Nothing from staff, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. We'd like to thank all those who participated in the presenters today, and I think we don't have anything else. We'll entertain a motion to adjourn this committee.
So moved.
Second.
Being no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for allowing me to join you. Executive session 8.
You're doing okay, Mark? You just decided farming would be a more better thing to do today than come to Quinn?
Yeah, it's, yeah. Everything's okay. I've just, we're short a couple of people that got hung up on travel. So they'll be back tomorrow, so I'll be out of here.
Okay, so they're down to you now, huh? Yeah.
That's the bottom of the barrel too, let me tell you.
Bad sign, man. Bad sign.
Okay, thank you.
Talk to you later. See you on Friday for sure. Possibly
Okay.
tomorrow. On Friday for sure. Thanks.